and welcome to a late night intimate bedroom edition of Ben's Junk, or Ben's Junk After Dark. Or another one of those weeks where the thing I was gonna cover kinda fell through and now I have to try and figure something else out. So anyway, we really are in the bedroom here, believe it or not, and it is reasonably late at night when I'm shooting this. Maybe I ought to put this out at 9 p.m. instead of my usual 9 a.m. But anyway, we're truly tucked away in the corner here, and this is going to be a follow-up to another Ben's Junk I did almost 5 years ago called Some of Ben's Vinyl Collection. And when I was preparing to do this just a few hours ago, I went back and re-watched the old one, just so I would know what I'd already covered. But I also decided to go back and reread the YouTube comments on that. And there was one in there that caught my attention, and it said effectively, "So where's the good stuff, Ben?" And I thought there was some good stuff in that first one, but I guess you could interpret that as where's the hits or the more valuable stuff. So this is what I consider to be my good stuff on this shelf. And of course, your mileage may vary, but you will see more hits this time around. And I don't think I own any particularly valuable records, but a few semi-valuable ones anyway. But let me give you a little lay of the land here. We are truly quietly tucked away in the corner here. And I have to keep my CD box sets down there too, just because they don't fit anywhere else physically. And there's actually one more behind that red bird set there. And this is also where I keep my little Denon bedroom stereo, CD player, radio, and I've kind of got it all tucked away right now. I don't have the antenna out. But I used to keep my secondary turntable up here, but I just needed the space. So I cleaned it off so I wouldn't look like a complete slob. But yeah, my little Blu-ray player, and just to hammer the point home that we're in the bedroom, yeah, there's a little TV in the dresser and all. So let me make some noises with wires and my tripod and stuff. But anyway, what I'm going to do here is, of course, when I talk music, I geek out, and it could go on for hours, days, weeks, months, years, decades, centuries, millennia, and we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull little handfuls from here, and I may just kind of gloss over it, or I may geek out on it for a few minutes. We'll just see how the mood strikes. But anyway, I'm going to take a cut here, and I'm going to pull the most stereotypically Archivian stuff out of here. And it's really just a precious few titles, and then we'll start getting more into the stuff I normally listen to and some hits, of course. But yeah, let's take that cut and let's get going. Okay, Ben, so when are you going to finally do Louis Louis? Well, it's either going to be an end of the season kind of thing or an end of the series kind of thing. So I'm not sure about that. But it's the only thing in my opening that I haven't covered yet that I actually intend to cover. There's one or two little stray bits in there that just they work nicely in the opening of a regular archive episode, but they're not that interesting. But anyway, yes, I will cover Louis Louis someday, and this was sent to me by a very, very nice viewer. And the only downside is this is not an original copy. I think this is from 1980, if I'm not mistaken. But this particular cover is a issue that was, I think, pressed in the Netherlands, maybe about 5 to 10 years ago. So, yeah, it's here. It's safe, it's sound. It's one of only 300 copies, which I think is more than the initial run, actually. But, yes, I've got it. It will be covered. I even have a movie that the guy appears in, so Yeah, the Ballad of Louis Louis will happen someday. All right. God bless Tiny Tim for all you 60s weirdos and fans of laughing. And yeah, it's a slipper kind of night. But anyway, I don't know what happened with this, but it's like somebody got this from a cutout bin and then decided to put a button through it. I don't know what the deal was there. But I picked this up on one of the archive thrifting episodes, and it was from an antique store, and it was more than I might normally pay for a lot of records, but it really wasn't too bad. It's been on CD, but it's kind of dodgy as far as being in print goes. But this is a really nice, clean copy of it. Well, certainly the most bizarre thing you're going to see here tonight. And I seem to remember in, what was it, the second public access TV episode, I was saying to the guys that hosted the rock show, you're not cool enough to have that Wildman Fisher album. Well, they didn't give it to me, of course, but I did ultimately score a copy. I think it was a couple of years ago now, and I had, it was just after Christmas, I'd gotten an eBay gift card, and I used it to purchase this. Really nice condition, and never legitimately released on CD, and yes, the album is just as nuts as it looks. Look this one up if you're not familiar. The story behind it with Frank Zappa. Truly one of those psychotic late 60s kind of records. And I have transferred this one. I did my own little homebrew remaster of this one, since I don't think this is ever going to see a real good, legit reissue. But this is indeed original, 1968. And yeah, there's the laugh-in tie there as well. He appeared at one point as, the Beautiful Downtown Burbank Choir or Glee Club director or something. Something in that first year or two that show was on. So we've done Moog stuff a few times now in archive. And I already had this on CD, but I found this one for $5, and it is just in absolutely beautiful condition. And it's, of course, all Moog stuff. But, well, I shouldn't say all. There's drums and other actual instruments, but it's Moog-driven. And the Minotaur, which somehow actually became a minor hit when this came out in 1969, which was an 8.5-minute Moog freakout that got cut down to 3 minutes. I mostly picked this up because it has such great artwork, and the details just get completely lost on CD. So I had to pick it up. Give you a quick little look at the gatefold. And speaking of Moog, about 5 minutes too late for Switched On Archive, I finally found a copy of Switched On Bach with the original cover. And not only is it a silly cover, not that the more famous one is much better, but the headphones that Bach is plugged into, it wouldn't be giving him anything. That is not a headphone jack. But yeah, I wish I had found this just a teeny bit sooner. So this is actually my third copy of this one. I've got the one with the more famous cover, and I've got a CD issue of it from on Columbia, mid-late 80s. So this is one of my go-to records for turntables, just because it's a good, well-mastered record, real good sound, good punchy, good, and just a good record in general. Slade, and Slade, questioned by the group Slade, which never really caught on here in the States. I rescued this from the dollar bin at a local record store here in South Dakota. And it had been there forever, but it was way overpriced. And then I went back one day, was going through the bargain bin, and it had been marked down to 99 cents and stuck in the bargain bin. And you gotta love that little bit of nipple censorship there. I have this one on CD as well. From that same visit, a much more normal record, Andrew Gould's first album. And if this came out today, it would probably be considered like a watershed of indie pop, but it just kind of sank when it came out in 1975. And it's just like quirky soft rock. It is soft rock, but it's just out there enough that I just can't picture too many, adult contemporary stations ever playing it. And it's my favorite of his. I think I've heard all of his now, and this is the one I always keep coming back to. All right, we'll take another cut here and we'll pull a few more records. So I already touched on Coven the first time around, but I thought I'd revisit it just because I have the complete collection now. So this is one of only a precious few modern records that I've ever bought. And I was going to get 2 copies of this so I could keep one sealed as a collector's item, but it just didn't happen. But this is one of the most notorious albums in rock history. They were initially called Witchcraft Coven, and the album destroys minds and reaps souls. And it's really just kind of pissy folk rock, kind of slightly angrier. I would call it, and I did call it in the last video, Jefferson Airplane on its period, which is about right for them. It's still a good record for the most part. If you find any of them, they're worth picking up for the most part anyway. But I found it interesting that this has the parental advisory sticker on it because there's no profanity on here. And it's got to be because there's the so-called satanic mass at the end of the album. And I'm not into the occult, but I couldn't tell you how accurate it is. But it's just so silly. It's 13 minutes plus. It's the end of the album. It's not a song. It's like a radio play version of a satanic mass. And it's like a cheap radio show too. You could tell sound effects are spliced in from other places, and it never quite makes sense spatially if you're listening with headphones. And it's over the top, and it's just really silly. So I'm guessing that's why it has the parental advisory sticker. Who knows? I've already got a CD copy of this one. But after that, Billy Jack, the Billy Jack soundtrack, which I covered the first time, they only have one song on here, or their lead singer has one song on here, and it's just credited to Coven. One Tin Soldier, their only hit, which got them their record deal back, because their first one, they lost their record deal because a copy of that first album was found in the Manson compound, Charles Manson, after the murders in the summer of '69, and the label got scared and dropped them, and yeah. But they got back together for this one. Actually, they never broke up, but they made another record, and it mostly stinks. This is the loser of the lot. Mostly just a bunch of pretty generic bar band rock. But weirdly enough, to me, at its best is when it's more ballads and acoustic stuff. You wouldn't expect that, and they're still trying to pull the evil thing here. And this is one of the more expensive LPs I've ever bought. Used ones, anyway. $15 or so. And I paid that because, one, it's never been on CD, and I don't think it's ever going to be on CD, and 2, this thing, the cutout notch notwithstanding, this thing is in absolutely perfect condition, and I got a great pass at it, and I did a little homebrew remaster for it, so yeah, I've got my own little collection of it. And their final album, which I covered the first time around. Bob Dylan, which I covered the first time around. Love Bob, but just never owned much of his stuff on vinyl. The only one I've picked up over the years, the last 5 years, is this rather scratchy copy of Highway 61 Revisited. Got that on one of the archive thrifting episodes. And oh god, Ben's gonna do the Eagles thing. But there's a bit of trivia that I'd like to cover with these. So I have all the original Eagles albums here except for their first live album. And let's just start with this. I don't know if it's a quirk, I don't know if it's a mistake or what, but this is the original pressing of this one, their first album, 1972. It's got a gatefold. Most copies of this don't. But when you open it up, it's upside down. So let me turn it over here, and it's just one of those early 70s, aren't we so cool, aren't we so mystical kind of band picks. But I also wanted to show off the original Asylum Records label, because they only used this briefly. So you know you've got an early Asylum record if it's got a white label. And yeah, I gave this one of those fancy pants mobile fidelity sleeves. I've been doing that more and more with my records. The ones I haven't touched in years still have no sleeves or just paper ones, and most of my Eagles stuff I haven't listened to on vinyl since I was a teenager, so they're a little more wonky in terms of just keeping them neat goes. So Desperado, On the Border, but here's what I really wanted to cover. Starting with One of These Nights, 1975. For the first couple pressings, I guess, of their albums, starting with this one, they would etch some pretty strange things into the dead wax of these, so I thought I would show them. Now, my copy of Hotel California doesn't have any of the goofy etchings, but this copy of One of These Nights does, and then The Long Run does. So, and yeah, this is a top loader. You don't see too many of those. So hopefully, I brought out my nice big light here, so hopefully it'll pick it up. But if I can make the camera focus, hopefully you can read it. It says, "Don't worry." And if you flip it over, see if I can make it line up. This thing needs cleaned. It says, "Nothing will be okay." Don't worry, nothing will be okay. So if you want to know how early your copy of your Eagles albums are, that's a good way to find out. And I bumped the camcorder. But let's take a quick look at The Long Run here. And this one is less cryptic and just more silly. So if I can make it read that, it says, "Never let your monster lay down." And I may have to turn the record to get my camera to pick it up. Yeah, it just doesn't want to play nice, but it is there. And then the B-side has "From the Pollock Who Sailed North." All right. And then quickly through the Little Feat albums. These sound really, really good. It's like somebody at Warner Brothers really liked them and put a lot of extra care into their albums. But this is my favorite of theirs, their live album, Waiting for Columbus, and I think one of the best live albums of all time. And I have a soft spot for these guys. This was the first concert that I attended that wasn't my own. This was 2004, and a couple more of the members have died since then, so yeah, unfortunately I missed Lil George, who died before I was born, but at least I got to see most of them. Feats Don't Fail Me Now, which obliterates the CD issue, and ditto for Sailing Shoes. And then I have their first one here, which would be rare if it were original. It only sold like 10,000 copies at the time. But this is a reissue from 1975 or 6. And this is sold, I think, reasonably well into the six figures now. So let me grab some more records here. Okay, you want the hits? You got the hits. We got my favorite record of all time, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. And I only have a few Floyd albums on vinyl. And I picked them all up between middle school and college. And they were fairly sought after at the time, too. So I think that might be part of why. None of them are in particularly great shape, except for one. And my copy of Dark Side is the epitome of average. Just average vinyl quality, average mastering. There's just nothing special about it. The CD blows it away. And then we get on to Wish You Were Here, which has somebody's writing on it. And this one sounds a lot better. I kind of wish I still had the wrapper for it with the two robotic arms shaking hands. But there's my copy of The Wall, and far and away the best condition and most complete of these. Having said that, it just doesn't, my copy at least, doesn't sound very good. It's very murky. And it's kind of murky on CD too, at least my late 90s copy of it. But it's a headphone album anyway. It's not really something you want to, test your speakers with. And then lastly, the final cut, the Borderline Roger Waters solo album. And the vinyl does not have the title written on it, which I think most of the CD issues of this do. There's a quick look at the gatefold, and I guess I should have done the gatefold for The Wall as well, because, it's a very famous gatefold, but still. Alright, and we're back out of the hits. I covered this Martin Briley album the first time, One Night with a Stranger, and I was just listening to this endlessly in the late 2000s, and it probably had a disproportionate effect on my songwriting on my last album, Minot. But what I really wanted to show was this one, Fear of the Unknown, his first, because I didn't have this one yet on vinyl when I did the two-parter I did on my favorite albums, because this was one of the runners-up at least. But on CD, it's only been on CD once, actually, as part of this little boxed set, which is packaged like a used textbook. But it doesn't really have the artwork anywhere except the inner booklet, and it's not a very good scan of it. But so I finally found a copy. I think I paid like $8 for this, which is kind of on the high end for an album that's just not really very sought after. But I just had to have it, when it's that big of a favorite. Covered Roxy Music the first time. Covered Stevie Wonder the first time as well. So, Songs in the Key of Life, complete, excellent condition, the 2.5 record set that it is, and the big booklet and all, and yeah. And it seems like this one's, I remember this sounding really good. Fulfillingness' first finale. And I did not have this one yet last time. Inner Visions, Talking Book, Superstition. So, yeah. Covered Buckingham Nicks the first time around. I actually have 2 copies of this album, but I mentioned that last time, so we'll just move on. Buzzy Linhart, kind of a cult favorite of mine at least, and one of those guys that maybe for a year or two seemed like he was gonna become famous and just never did. Had 1 or 2 albums I think scraped the bottom of the charts and just kind of vanished, and I think this is his most recent work, and this is from '82. But this is just a little EP, 4 sides of Buzzy Linhart, 2 originals and 2 covers. And I would have rather have had all originals because the covers just they add nothing to the tunes. So, but the cover, or the originals rather, are good. And this is the only album I've ever owned on translucent red vinyl. So you can still read the album title through there. And they started their own record label just to put this out. As far as I know, this is the only Caramar Records release. And speaking of Buzzy Linhart, this is a reissue of an album he did that was, well, he had a band that he just called Music. I guess there was a band called The Band. Why not have, just Music? But this is a reissue, and it became a 2-record set for the reissue. So you've got the Music album plus his debut as a bonus disc. And I need to take another crack at this. I've transferred this to CD, but it was on the original turntable, and it's not a very good job I did, so yeah. And I always kind of botch the name Jean-Michel Jarre, and I'm not even going to say the name of the album because somebody always criticizes me for it, so whatever. Really good sounding record, though. Polydor did an excellent job with this, but most 70s Polydor stuff sounds really good. I mean, I've got this on CD. I've got a very early CD of this one, actually, pressed in West Germany, if you want to know how old that CD is. But yeah, this is the US vinyl. Well, I do love me some Rascals, but this is actually the only one of theirs that I've ever owned on vinyl. And this is their rather premature greatest hits timepiece from 1968. They still had, I think, another 4 hits beyond that, and one of those was a #1. So People Got to Be Free. If you're a fan of that song, forget it. It's not on here. But there's really only, if you have the original albums, there's only one reason to own this, and that's their hit, A Beautiful Morning, which you've probably heard on the oldies station a million times if you listen to an oldies station with any kind of regularity. But it is a good listen on its own. But I've had 3 copies of this one now. I actually first owned this one on reel to reel. And I don't remember the order of the other 2, but I have it on CD now, and I have it on vinyl here. And I think at one point this was supposedly the least valuable record on Discogs. And I don't know how true that is, but I'd like to think not, because it's certainly not a measure of the quality. And so, as I said, its main problem is that it was too early. It was too soon. They were right at the peak of their popularity with this one. But anyway, I guess we can take a quick look at the gatefold. I don't think this is an original issue or even near original. I think this is more like mid to late 70s. And this is one of those ones that's mostly stayed in print, I think, over the years, even though it was obsolete within like 6 months of it coming out. But yeah, there we go. Now, it's very well known that I'm a pretty huge, pretty diehard Byrds fan, but I only have 3 of their regular albums on vinyl and a greatest hits. But this is what I consider to be their final album, Farther Along, 1971. And there was a reunion album in 73 of the original lineup, but not only does it not sound like the latter-day Byrds, it doesn't sound like the original either. And of course, if it's the original lineup, you think they would have gone back to that. But yeah, it's just like a bunch of stray solo tunes with the guys backing each other, and it's pretty spotty. So I consider this the last one. It's the last one that certainly feels like a band. But this particular LP, and I mean this copy, has a pretty good place in my heart, because this was, I used to go to this record store called Twist and Shout in Denver, and I went there my parents would take me there when I was in middle school, and I kept going there till just about 6 weeks before I moved out to South Dakota in 2018. And the last time I went there, it was April of 2018, and I made my only public appearance for Oddity Archive that night. I opened for the Found Footage Fest because they were playing just next to the record store. So I, of course, went early so I could have one last rummage through the store. And I picked out 2 of my Birds LPs on that night. And so, yeah, it's got a good meaning to me. And this copy is in really good shape. So I'm not even sure it's worth the $6 that I paid for it, but it was worth it to me. And I should note that I have one of their box sets living on this shelf because it just doesn't fit anywhere else physically. But then we get to the album that you're supposed to hate of theirs, Bird Maniacs, which is it sounds pretty bad. It's not a well-engineered, well-mixed record. A bunch of stuff got added to it, supposedly without the band's consent. I think that's only kind of half true. Some of the songs sound like they're supposed to have horns and strings on them, but some of the songs don't. So I'm guessing a few songs were supposed to get the full treatment, and then their producer just went overboard when the band wasn't looking because they had to get back on tour. Now, I think this is the one of theirs. We mentioned Moog synthesizers earlier, and I'm pretty sure there's a picture of Roger McGuinn at his Moog, even though he's certainly not known for playing the thing. And I think he only used it 2 or 3 times on Birds records, and you really have to listen for it. But I know there's a picture in existence of him with it, and it's one of the real big original modulars. But damned if I can find it right now. Oh well. And then Untitled, their double album. One side is just a rendition of 8 Miles High, and I love that version. I think most people probably hate it, but because most of it's just a free-form jam. It only sounds like 8 Miles High for a few seconds at the beginning, and they do only part of the proper song at the end. But this was kind of a big FM hit, and actually these later ones were kind of rock radio hits even when I was in like middle school. Maybe it was just a Denverite old hippie thing, but I used to hear Chestnut Mare and Well Come Back Home on the rock station when I was a teenager quite a bit, and then they just kind of disappeared. I'm thinking that's a partially local thing and partially hippie thing. Okay, here's the Moog picture. I got my albums mixed up. So there's McGuinn, and I'm not sure if that's his kid or not, but playing with a little amplifier down there. Now, this copy of their greatest hits, a really, really common album, but this is a much later issue. In fact, this might be the last of the original vinyl issues from the 80s, albums from 67, but it's got a barcode on it. And the pressing is just horrible, really sibilant. It doesn't matter what turntable you play it on or how good or bad the cartridge is, it's just not a good pressing. But I have yet to find another earlier copy of this that's reasonably priced and, of course, in decent shape. One of my all-time favorite albums, Tom Waits' first, Closing Time. And this is not an original issue, but it's not one of the current reissues. This is from 76, I would guess, but it's not a very good sounding record. It's kind of the epitome of average vinyl, average sound. But, you know, when I found it, and it was pricey enough, I think it was like $20 or something, but I just had to have it because it's one of those albums that's just such a part of me. But of course, Tom on vinyl is so overpriced that it's the only one of his that I've ever picked up on vinyl. And I really am not interested in the current reissues. I'd rather have the original 70s and early 80s stuff. Now, this is my favorite of Pete Townshend's stuff, and I'm really not that big into The Who. I actually like Pete Townshend's solo better. All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes. And this one I largely keep on this shelf because I consider it a good stress test for a turntable, specifically a cartridge. A good way to hear if it's aligned properly and just how good it is. Because of the final song on the album, Slit Skirts, and the S is so hard on it that it's a good way to test your alignment, and it also comes right at the end of side 2. I'm pretty sure I already covered this the first time around, Mitch Ryder. One of my all-time favorite albums, Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs. Derek and the Dominoes, Dwayne Allman, Eric Clapton, Derek, Dwayne, Eric. And this is not an original issue. This is a Polydor issue from the mid-70s, I think. And it was on Atco in the US initially. But it has a really great montage, which has made it, to all the CD issues, but it's kind of hard to really appreciate it on a little CD booklet. Had this since I was in high school. And here's kind of an oddity. 4 tracks from Steely Dan. This is a British EP from 77, I think. And I picked it up because before their first album, they had a single out. And it was Dallas on one side and Sail the Waterway on the other. And I don't think that ever made it past the promo pressing. So it's a really, really rare single. But they're both really good songs, and I kind of wish they were on their first album. But the Becker and Fagan just apparently hated it. But yeah, I picked this up because it's pretty much the only place to find it. I think there's a Japanese greatest hits that might have it. But as far as I know, those 2 songs have never found their way to CD or download or anything. So that was my main reason in picking this up, and I did my own little transfer and all. And speaking of Steely Dan, an early issue, if not the truly original issue, and my voice is cracking, of their first album, Can't Buy a Thrill. Got this here in South Dakota, $2. Not in the greatest condition. The cover's a lot better than the record. But it's noteworthy in that there was Dunhill Records, which became ABC Dunhill, which became ABC, which got swallowed by MCA eventually. But this is that transition from ABC Dunhill to just straight up ABC. So we have this kind of weird between logo going on that I've never seen anywhere else. All right, I think I'm going to make this the last batch for today, just because this could go on forever, as I said earlier. So why not just keep the door open for a volume 3 and a volume 4 and a volume 5? It'll give me something to do on those off weeks where the thing I intend to cover falls apart, and yeah. So let's get into it. So first off, Phil Spector just died within the last week or 2 as of my shooting this. And this is one of the very few new records I've purchased, and I've had this for a while now. But this is the Sundazed issue of the Christmas album, A Christmas Gift for You, which is probably my favorite Christmas album. And it's, as far as the standards go, like Winter Wonderland and a lot of those, this is the only version that I will accept. It's the only time where it's not really syrupy. But I'll give Sundazed this much. They did a great job. They used real good vinyl, good mastering, everything. But it sounds weirdly like a CD to me. It still sounds very obviously digital. So I guess the hunt continues for an older copy. But every time I see them, they're just off the charts, especially if it's an original 1963 copy where a beaten up one will still go for $100. But yeah, this is okay. But I have it on this. So I'm going to briefly break the vinyl rule. This is CDs, but since I was bringing out the Christmas record, figured I'd bring this out. I got this at Twist and Shout, strangely enough, just around the time Spector was going to prison. So it's like they decided these albums, they had like 2 or 3 copies of this at the time. I guess they figured they were cursed or something because they marked them way down. So of course I swooped in and bought one. I mean, it's not like Spector could collect royalties behind bars anyway. That's part of California law. But yeah, here is the box set, and it is one of those truly early 90s overdone huge sets. You got the gigantic booklet. But best of all, you got a little button back to mono in the CD copy of the Christmas album. But yeah, all the hits are here. And there's issues of the Christmas album with Spector on the cover wearing a button that says back to mono. And that's generally how you know you have a mono copy of it, which is what I prefer of that album. I do have a stereo cassette of the Christmas album, and it just loses its punch. Everything sounds so distant, very un-Spector. But anyway, moving on. I forgot to cover this when I had the Wildman Fisher LP out earlier. So this is the first single on Rhino Records, 1975. Go to Rhino Records, Wildman Fisher, and I'm pretty sure he just made this up on the spot. And I tried to cover this on Archive when I did the first Cult VHS episode. I still haven't done the second one yet. But the B-side was some of the founders of Rhino, and I think 1 or 2 of the people that ran their store, because initially it was a store, a record store, just filling it out. But I had a CD that I thought was with this, but it was actually something from Rhino to promote their 20th or 25th anniversary, and it was kind of a Dickie Goodman styled cut-in record. And unfortunately, neither of these 2 tunes are there, at least in their entirety. So if your idea of a good record is a valuable one, I think this is the most valuable one I've got. This single from the Misfits, Halloween 1981, unmarked orange 45. The song's fine, both of them, but man, it is just not, there wasn't a whole lot of quality control. It's one of the worst sounding singles I've ever heard. But yeah, I guess this could be 1% of a retirement fund or something. Like I said, I think this one is pretty valuable anyway. So one of the first LPs I ever owned, and by turn one of the first albums in general I ever owned, was Purple Rain, Prince. I got this at a garage sale when I was in, I think, 5th grade. And what a great early record to have. Darling Nikki comes to mind. No innuendo intended there. So this one, it's got a good place in my heart. And it's a pretty decent sounding record, too. And I've got 1999 as well, which doesn't sound so good. It's really murky. Even the old CD, original issue CD, sounds better. Covered this the first time around, and I think I actually did the Prince ones very quickly as well. But Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, I guess this is reasonably valuable now. It certainly wasn't when I got it. I don't even remember when I got it. I think I was maybe in high school, late high school, early college. The drums sound really good on this. For whatever reason, it didn't quite translate to the CD. So I've got all but one of the significant Allman Brothers albums on vinyl. So we'll just quickly go through those. This is what's considered by the critics to be the least of them, Win, Lose, or Draw. But I actually really like this one. I think this album gets a bad rap. Now I'm missing Brothers and Sisters. We're going in reverse order here. Missing Brothers and Sisters, which is the one with Ramblin' Man. I'm sure I'll find one eventually, but I have all the Dwayne era albums, and to me those are the ones that really, really matter. So if you're into the Archive Thrifting series, you already saw me pick this up quite recently, actually. Almonds at Fillmore East. And I think this is probably a late 70s issue. And then a compilation of their first two albums, Beginnings. And we'll just, there's nothing really in the gatefold for this one. Now, I've only got the second Dwayne Allman anthology on vinyl. I have the first one on CD, and one of the discs is very badly scratched, so I guess I'll need to replace that. Not that this Volume 2 is in any great condition. It's very crackly, and not because it's bad vinyl, but just because it was used heavily when I first got it, and I was in high school when I got this, and I beat it into the ground that much more. But anyway, on that note, let's close things down for tonight. I'll talk to you again soon. Volume 3 of Ben's vinyl collection to follow at some unspecified time and date and place.